Hello YouTube. A couple of things going on in this video. First of all, I'm doing Mellow Corn. Second, I'm rebranding the channel, which is to say I'm actually giving it a brand for the first time. Up until now, I've just been calling it under my name, which isn't particularly Googleable or anything like that. So we're going to call this thing Different Spirits, because that's kind of what I focus on in these videos is the spirits out there that really deserve more attention and discussion that they're getting in the environments, which is sort of saturated with hype about the latest limited releases in more popular categories. And I think this is particularly important because not only because I don't see a whole lot of it being done, but also because, people are just going to start looking for new things, outside of the sort of normal walks of whiskeys, which sort of saturate the review sphere on YouTube. Not only because of the sort of individual, injustices going on in whiskey, the $60 Lafroig 10s and the Eagle rares being torn off the shelves and put into, collections. But just because people's palates get fatigued, you need new things every once in a while. And in order to navigate your way around those new things, you need information about them. And that's kind of what I try to do. But you don't need to venture that far to give yourself, something new to experience and explore. And Mellow Corn and the corn whiskey category in overall is kind of a good example of that. Mellow Corn is pretty well known already. It's sort of already established a reputation for itself as both a kind of running joke in the whiskey community, but also, the object of grudging respect because of both how solid it is and how cheap it is. You'd probably not be paying more than $15-20 for a bottle of this in a store. And yet it is bottled in bond, has all the trappings that involves, made by Heaven Hill, of course. What I think gets and there's lots of reviews of Mellow Corn, some of them a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and that's okay. What gets less attention is maybe the corn whiskey category. So before I dive into this, well, let's pour a little bit. I really want to talk about the corn whiskey category because it is fascinating, and I think it is underappreciated and underexploited by the producers. Now, if you're coming to this without having sort of read the fine print, you might think, okay, well, bourbon is a subclass of corn whiskey, right? So the regulations on corn whiskey are just going to look like the bourbon regulations, but a little bit less stringent somehow. That's what you would think, and you would actually be completely wrong. In fact, if you read the regulations, bourbon and corn whiskey are mutually exclusive categories. So even if you wanted to take something that would legally pass as a bourbon and sort of declassify it, sell it as a corn whiskey instead, you wouldn't legally be able to do that because the regulations run against each other. So everyone knows the regulations on bourbon, right? You have to have a mash bill, majority corn. You have to distill it to no more than 80% alcohol. You have to barrel it at no more than 62.5% alcohol. And it has to be aged in new charred American white oak. So no reusing barrels ever at all. That is disallowed. And you have to char the barrels, meaning you actually have to light the inside of the damn things on fire. You have to burn the inside of your barrels before you can put your white dog in there. Otherwise, it doesn't count as bourbon. Which is to say, from the beginning, any bourbon that's got any sort of age on it at all, that spent more than a few days in barrel, is going to have some pretty heavy extractive oaky notes in there, along with some barrel char notes. And we know these notes, right? Like we've all of us who've been drinking bourbon for a little while, that's just like, those are the dead giveaways that you're dealing with. A bourbon or something in that sort of charred new oak category. Move over to corn whiskey. In some ways, it's less restrictive, so you don't actually have to age your corn whiskey. You can just bottle it right off. Although the cheaper options out there, the Georgia Moons, the stuff that's sold in mason jars, they will age their whiskey for a couple of weeks. But technically, you could sell your just white dog, your corn white dog as corn whiskey. So that's a little bit less restrictive, but and some stuff is the same. The 80% ABV on distillation, the 62%, 62.5% on cap on barrel strength. That's the same. And if you are aging your corn whiskey, you can it would qualify for the same straight qualification as you get in bourbon, and you can bottle it in bond if you're meeting all those requirements, which is a whole different discussion. But the mash bill requirement is actually more stringent than bourbon is. It has to be 80% plus corn, which is a little bit. So you do see that in some bourbon mash bills. Heaven Hill, their main bourbon mash bills is almost there already. It's 78% corn. Buffalo Trace, no one knows the exact numbers, but presumably the Buffalo Trace mash bill 1 is in that range. The Dickel mash bill is in that range, so it's not that unusual. But that's a bar you have to step over. That's a little bit more difficult. And okay, so not only you're allowed to use, in the case of corn whiskey, used barrels that have previously contained something else. Not only are you allowed to use toasted new oak rather than charred new oak. So if you're just toasting up your new oak, that's okay. You're allowed to do that. The only kind of barrel you are disallowed from using is charred oak. If you are charring your oak, you cannot sell it as corn whiskey, which is why bourbon and corn whiskey are mutually exclusive categories. So in fact, it's not. Corn whiskey and bourbon are cousins, obviously. I mean, the mash bill is very similar. But as another cousin of corn whiskey, you might think of, for example, something like this. This is Weiser's 23-year-old. I reviewed this and I absolutely flipped for it. If this had spent all of its 23 years in charred new oak, it would be undrinkable at this point. It would taste like, tree bark, basically. What this is a story of how terrific aging in used oak, particularly used American oak, can be. This is an absolutely delicious whiskey, and if you're tasting this, I'm not going to do this here, but if you're tasting this side by side with Mellow Corn, you can absolutely see the resemblance. And by the way, because this is a point of the channel, if you're a bourbon drinker looking for alternatives, go buy this. This is like $70, and it's just sitting on the shelves while, non-age statement MGP stuff at the same price range is sort of, goes like crazy. Go buy some high-end Canadian whiskey, guys. All right, so it's got that resemblance to something like Canadian whiskey, which you can age longer and you can get more creative with the mode of aging, right? So it's not just, and this is where I think really you can start to play with the category, and where I really wish producers would play more with the category. Imagine a scenario when, if you're a bourbon producer and you're watching this, probably not, because I don't get that much exposure. But suppose you are. Imagine you could take a pretty standard, normal bourbon mash bill, maybe one that's more corn heavy than is stylish these days. We like our barely legal bourbons these days. But anyways, a perfectly normal bourbon mash bill of 80% plus corn. You distill that, and instead of throwing it in your standard virgin charred oak barrel, you throw it in an ex-Madeira cask, maybe a French oak cask, I know that Serge Valentine just reviewed late last year a Heaven Hill bottled for someone in Europe that was aged its entire life in a port pipe. Do I want to try corn whiskey from Heaven Hill that was aged full term in port pipes? Yes, I would. In fact, Serge gave it like an 86, 87, something like that. So even he liked it. And he's not necessarily a fan of American whiskey or port maturation for that matter. So there's something here. There's something you can play around with. To the extent that people are maybe starting to get a little bit tired of those standard bourbony flavors, even with the use of finishes, right? You can, because, I mean, it seems like de facto you can finish your bourbon any old way you want. But in that case, when you've got two different casks, you're always going to have the risk of crossing your wires, interference happening. Some finishes are absolutely brilliant. Some are really bad. Most are just kind of meh. Whereas, in full maturation, you can get, a much more focused flavor profile. So I really think, the corn whiskey category, even though it may not be the most sexy category right now, we all love mellow corn. But, no one thinks mellow corn is sexy and stylish. But the category should really be, something that should be getting more exploration. Someone out there could be making something magnificent by throwing, some corn heavy white dog into an ex Riesling cask or something, an ex 7-year cask. And I could see something like that being absolutely magical. It's just not happening because, bourbon is sort of dominating the category. Really, aside from, stuff like Georgia Moon and things which are not aged at all or barely aged, the only prominent example of corn whiskey I can think of on the market right now is stuff coming out of Balcones, the True Blue and stuff like that, which, so far as I'm aware, isn't doing that kind of playful exploration of casks that I'm really thinking about. So basically, that's a little bit of a rant. Let's get into actually tasting the whiskey. Basically, I think that whatever your opinion on mellow corn, the corn whiskey category really deserves a little bit more love and attention from the producers, and from you, assuming someone out there is doing it. Let's see more port pipe matured Heaven Hills out there, stuff like that. All right, mellow corn. It's a nice nose. It's very Heaven Hill. This is not the only Heaven Hill outside of their standard bourbon and rye range that I've ranted about and celebrated. I've also celebrated Sacred Bond here. This is great. Go buy this. And in their bourbon range, I put that too far back. I have previously reviewed this little Evan Williams Bottle and Bond, which is really priced about the same as this mellow corn, so they're direct competitors with each other. But incidentally, look at the difference in color. I'm not sure if you can actually see, but that difference in color really tells the tale of fresh virgin charred oak versus not. So let's keep that over there. Just to give you a little spoiler, I think I actually like the mellow corn more than I like the Evan Williams. All right, Heaven Hill. Hard to figure out the mash bill on this. People are making different guesses. I don't know if there's anything behind that, but on the Heaven Hill site, they're basically saying 80% odd corn, and then up to 20% something else, rye and malted barley. This is presumably bottled in around 2020, and because it's bottled in bonds, everything same season, same producer, all that stuff, and it's bottled at 100 proof, 50% ABV on the nose. It's a surprisingly dense nose. First of all, it's recognizable as Heaven Hill right away. There's that sort of dried leafy character I always get in Heaven Hill stuff. that kind of nutshelly character. And it's mingled with a confectionery note. It's really quite dense. I mean, this is something that, a couple of years ago, I hope we've moved beyond this, but a couple of years ago, this was really popular to throw at people blind because they would mess with them. Because initially, you are getting a lot of wood. I actually think, especially on the nose, this feels a lot older than the sort of bottle and bond minimum of 4 years. I don't think it's that much older. I would guess maybe 6 odd years old. No way of backing that up, but I think it's older than 4 in any case. Yeah, the distillate and the wood are kind of playing into each other. A lot of toasted corn, just like, just have a bonfire and toast some corn over it, and then kind of smell your corn cob. And then the mixed nutshells, some kind of freshly ground coffee, maybe some, I don't know, island coffee, Costa Rican coffee. The leaves, the dried autumn leaves thing, and then a lot of vanilla. What is that? Some funky corny, almost a tortilla note, like corn tortillas, fresh corn tortillas. And almost like a toasted bread note, like supermarket rye that's like actually still mostly wheat bread or wheat grain, and with the little caraway seeds in it. If you sort of take that, throw it in the toaster for a while, let it get a little burned, that's kind of a note I'm getting in this. Slightly burned supermarket rye. The ethanol is coming through a little bit. There's a little bit of a nail polish note in this. It's not, detracting at all. It's just sort of there, just hanging out. And a little bit of an interesting green note. There's a little cucumber in there. On the palate, comes across, still feels more dense than you might expect from something in this price range, in like $15 price range. Has a weird thinness to it though too, which is something I get a lot of the time on Heaven Hill products, and I can never explain. I get it on the Heaven Hill too. This stuff. It's a little bit simpler and sweeter on the palate. Lots of the same notes from before. Burn toast, toasted corn, a lot of toasted corn actually. A little creamed corn in there too. But maybe you'd like toast up your creamed corn with like one of those little culinary blowtorches. Some cereal-y notes. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Yeah, you're getting that cereal note, or cinnamon note, but it's really mingled with a kind of grainy cereal note. Comes across as surprisingly oaky, considering, legally there can't be any charred fresh oak on this. I'm guessing that maybe that's just like the toasted virgin oak. It's just a different character, and it's really interesting. It's like fresh oak chips, but nice, like real oak chips, like you made them at home with a tree you cut down yourself. Not like the crap you buy at the grocery store for bad barbecuing. And they're going to drizzle your chips with like some clover honey or something. A little brioche in there, a little bakery note. Again, that kind of slightly green, almost cucumbery hint of cucumber in there. A little kind of dusty. So you're getting almost both kind of, upper level of a barn that no one's explored before in a couple of decades kind of dust, mixed with a kind of like crushed pebble dust, like rock dust. White pepper, coming in the back end, but surprisingly, considering how much I'm feeling a little, the oak, the tannins aren't attacking me all that much. Yeah, it's a very pleasant finish actually. Um, it doesn't have that sort of mouth sucking tannic effect on it. It's just kind of white pepper, little little bit of grapiness, but not too much. It's extremely solid. Yeah, and I do actually like this more than the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond, and you can quote me on that. There is a hell of a lot more to this, and than the little yellow, fun yellow retro label thing. And you know, there's more to the corn whiskey category than just this, or at least there should be. Really, I'm waiting for Heaven Hill to eventually present some upper level versions of this stuff. I really hope they do. I really hope they do stuff like, crazy port pipe corn whiskey. That would be awesome. Or even just this a little bit older, barrel pick, something like that. That would be great. So what I just did is add a little bit of water to it. I'm gonna let this settle down a little bit, see how it behaves under pressure. Back in the nose with water. So I wasn't really getting that sort of dusty, attic-y kind of barn attic thing before, but it's coming through a bit more now. A little more, not rock dust, more like just wet rocks. A little more honey now. It feels actually more restrained on the nose than it was before. Not a whole lot of development. It smelled substantial before, and it smells substantial now. It just smells, substantial in a different way. On the palate. Becomes more confected. You're getting sort of a chocolate croissant kind of note now. Some candy nuts. I like this. And the mouthfeel improves a little bit. It still has that slightly Heaven Hilly thinness to it, but I mean the mouthfeel actually improves with the addition of water. So, I mean this works. This is actually quite solid. I would give this. It's not blowing me out of the water. It's not great. It's not even really good. But I mean so this is an 80 point out of 100 spirit for me. But I like it. I like that it feels like it's confident at that ranking. You know what this is? This is like a. Sorry, I'm kind of getting over a cold. That guy at the gym? He isn't really very good. His best squat is like a 195. But he's just a great guy, and he kind of knows that he's not that good, and he's comfortable with that. He's doing everything right. His squats are good form, gets depth, all that stuff. He's maybe he's not going to be winning any powerlifting championships or anything like that, but he's great to hang around with, and he seems like he's basically doing things right. That's what this is. This is the very solid guy at the gym who can't lift very much, but you like him anyways. Yeah, 80 points out of 100. What I want to stress though is I really think this is only a kind of preview for better corn whiskeys to come. This is a category very, very much worth exploring. Someone out there is going to, do something crazy like, pot distill a mash with a bunch of heritage corn, and then, God help us, throw it in a Sauterne cask or something for 4 years and come out with something which is going to blow all of our minds. And I'm really looking forward to that day. And if you have the equipment to do that, you should be the one to do it. Anyways, that's all I can think of to say. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting this channel, small that it is. And I hope I can continue to educate and provide useful points of reference and all that stuff. All right, that's Mellow Corn. Thanks for watching, and cheers.